my husband Don and I adopted three deaf children. We currently have three deaf sons, ages 26, 24, and 18. Their names are Chris, Jim, and Jason. And each one of them has a unique story. Our youngest son, for example, Jason, is actually what we call our number one son because he has been with us the longest. Jason was 3 years old when we adopted him, and how we learned about him was a great story. It happened that one Sunday afternoon in January, back in 1986, we received a call from a friend of mine from Long Island who used to interpret in a church there on Long Island. And Mary called us and said, "How would you like to adopt a deaf child?" We laughed because we actually had been wanting to adopt deaf children even before we had ever gotten married. We had talked about it, but we had never shared with anybody about that. That was our secret plan that we wanted to do. So, needless to say, we were thrilled at the possibility, and we made a contact with the person who was trying to find a home for Jason. Jason was born in Bogota, Colombia, in South America. He was given up at birth and stayed in a hospital area for a number of months. And finally, a couple from the United States flew down to South America to bring him home and adopt him in the States. When they did this, later on they found out that he was deaf. And after having him for about a year and a half, they decided that he needed to have a family who could give him more support. So this was how he became available for adoption again. Jason came on board when he was 3 years old. At that time, he had no communication skills at all. He did not know sign language. He was profoundly deaf. And yet he was the cutest boy you had ever seen. And it took him approximately 3 years to begin developing sign communication. Part of that had to do with the fact that he had an additional disability. That disability is called pervasive developmental disorder, and we did not know that when we first adopted him. PDD is a form of autism, and that often impacts a child in how they learn language. We're very pleased that over the years, however, that Jason has had excellent schooling at the School for the Deaf in Rochester, New York, and he's doing very well now. And as I mentioned before, he's 18 years old now. Our second son we adopted was Chris, and Chris was from North Carolina originally. We found out about him when he was 12 years old. He had had 6 foster families before he came to our home, and had just begun learning sign language for about 3 years before he came to join us at age 12. He also attended the Rochester School for the Deaf and graduated a few years ago. He's doing very well and is currently living in Florida and is engaged to be married. Our third son, Jim, was originally from the Binghamton, New York area. He is hard of hearing, and we adopted him when he was age 13, and he came on board. Because he is hard of hearing, he initially attended a regular public school, middle school here in Rochester. However, my husband and I decided that his needs were not being met educationally, and we were finally able to convince the school district to have him placed at Rochester School for the Deaf. Jim successfully graduated from high school there and is now living down in the Binghamton area again. In terms of adopting children, some of the things that you need to think about have to do with whether you want to go ahead and go through a private adoption or adopt through a private agency. When we adopted Jason, we went through a private adoption process. Jason at that time, at age 3, was living in a different state. We had to have our attorney check with another attorney in that state because state laws for adoption vary. Because we were living in the state of New York, it ended up that the first adoptive couple had to actually fly here to Rochester, New York, and surrender Jason in a court in order for us to then go ahead and become guardians for Jason for 6 months, and then we were able to petition the court to adopt him after 6 months. And so that was a private adoption. When later on, when we decided we would like to have another child, we went through the Department of Social Services. And when you do that, you need to go through specific training that the state provides, as well as filling out a number of documents regarding your background. That took quite a bit of time, and we were able to do that successfully. It's important, if you want to adopt children, to read about adoption and to receive some counseling ahead of time, because children, especially children who are older, who you might adopt, usually join the family and already have a lot of emotional baggage that they bring with them. So it's important to understand the kinds of issues that they probably are going to be bringing to the family. It's also important to connect with other adoptive parents. There are actually support networks set up in the state and locally as well, so that when you are challenged, you have somebody to go to and talk with them. In terms of finding deaf children to adopt, there is one network that I'm aware of now. There's a website that a woman maintains related to deaf children who become available for adoption. And certainly, if you were interested, you could contact me and I'd be glad to give you that information. I think that's about all that I want to share right now. I would like to just thank God, though, for our three deaf sons that he provided to us. Thanks.
How did I get involved in working with deaf people?